Glad you could join us today on EdFile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. The World Food Program warns more than 5.6 million people do not have enough to eat in areas affected by the Boko Haram crisis in the Lake Chad region, where violence has led to a surge of refugees and internally displaced people. It is becoming more evident that regional conflicts have been aggravated by climate change. More so, Nigeria, being one of the climate vulnerable countries in the world, must do more at this point in time. Lake Chad, once one of Africa's largest water body, is now a patchwork of weeds, ponds and islands. Images from space show how a huge body of water 50 years ago is now just the 20th of that size. As the waters have receded, land that was once fertile has turned dusty and barren. The swampy maze of islands in the border areas between Chad, Niger, Cameroon and Nigeria have now also become a main target for the militant Boko Haram group.
Unfortunately, we don't talk about it. We only talk about migration linked to the wars in Syria and Iraq. We talk about immigration by sea, immigration through the Sahel. But the fact remains that there is climate change, which has made life impossible for those living in those areas where agriculture and pastoral production have declined massively. It's hard for people to make a living, and people are forced to travel far and risk their lives to make a living.
People who normally fish and farm on fertile islands in Lake Chad had fled their homes in recent weeks following attacks by the militants who have massacred villages and looted crops and livestock. Most of the displaced are women and children. Some of the men have been killed or have migrated for work. The number of children under 5 and women suffering from malnutrition may rise further in the areas affected by the crisis.
Boko Haram is making us suffer. We fled when they attacked a village nearby.
Matu Bulumi, a 65-year-old village leader who fled the village of Galia on the islands of Lake Chad, arrived on the mainland on the 9th of December 2015. Bulumi and his family were resettled in the Kulukume displaced persons camp, currently hosting about 5,000 Chadians. The United Nations agency warns insecurity could lead to prolonged hunger as attacks in Chad intensify and continue in Nigeria, Cameroon and Niger. The World Food Program provides food aid to camps with rations including cereals, lentils, vegetable oil and a blend of fortified cereals and vitamins.
Here in the Lake region of Chad, the World Food Program is scaling up its operations as more and more displaced people are arriving, people fleeing the violence on the islands near the border with Nigeria, people who virtually left everything behind them, the food that they had harvested this year, their clothes, their tools, their fishing nets, and the vast majority of them rely almost exclusively on humanitarian aid.
The United Nations Food Agency aims to provide food assistance to 600,000 in the area affected by the crisis. Populations in Sahelian Africa are among the poorest and most vulnerable to climatic variability and land degradation. They depend heavily on healthy ecosystems for rain-fed agriculture, fisheries, and livestock management to sustain their livelihoods. These constitute the primary sectors of employment in the region and generate at least 40% of the gross domestic product in most of the countries. Additionally, the ecosystem provides much-needed livelihood products such as firewood and bushmeat. Unfortunately, increasing population pressures on food, fodder, and firewood in a vulnerable environment have deteriorating impact on natural resources, notably vegetation cover. Climate variability, along with frequent droughts and poorly managed land and water resources, have caused rivers and lakes to dry up and contribute to increased soil erosion. African leaders in December called for the revival of Lake Chad, which has been shrinking due to climate change, destroying the livelihoods of thousands who live in the region, who are already suffering from drought and high levels of malnutrition. African leaders told the world that the effect of the shrinking lake have also led to increased social conflicts, high rates of migration and cross-border movements.
Chaque jour, de paisibles citoyens sont enlevés.
Innocent citizens are being kidnapped, tortured and slaughtered. Their houses are burned and their possessions are stolen by lawless terrorists. There is a tight link between the Lake Chad shrinking and the territory that Boko Haram occupies in the region. Along with permanent insecurity, there is also a disastrous economic situation that is characterized by a fragile environment on which there are thousands of refugees and displaced people, as well as famine and other diseases. We need to act, and act now before it's too late.
Il faut agir vite avant qu'il ne soit trop tard.
If that region is secured by the program being submitted by Lake Chad Basin Commission to empty one of the rivers from Central African Republic into Chad Basin, at least 5 million people will benefit, and those who live through poverty and oppression of the terrorists will no longer dare to cross the Sahara Desert and the Atlantic, in which most of them lost their lives. It is therefore in the interest of all of us to make sure that this project that was first mentioned in 1925 should be executed.
One plan of action discussed at the meeting requires around $14 billion over a period of 10 years. The project will mainly be financed by donors with 90% and the remaining 10% by member states of the Lake Chad Basin, as well as the African Development Bank.
From the discussion that I had with President Hollande, and President Buhari was in that particular session, about the whole issue of the Lake Chad. In fact, President Buhari spoke up so strongly about the need to have $14 billion of investment to revitalize the Lake Chad area. I am very big about Lake Chad Basin because that basin used to be 25,000 kilometers wide. Today that basin is only 2,000 kilometers. It has shrunk, and as the size of it went down, so did the opportunities for the communities. Agriculture was dead. Jobs were dead, nothing there. And so the area just got taken over by terrorists. No, we've got to understand, as we revive Lake Chad Basin, we create new opportunities. We create hope for young people. We reduce environmental degradation. And we stop a roosting ground for terrorists.